Hi everyone! In today's video we'll be looking at my game versus Stefan Dogs, the international master from Belgium that recently got sanctioned by FIDE by cheating, because of cheating, in the over-the-board tournament back in 2022 or 23, yeah, 2022 in Benidorm, Spain. So this guy, also the guy who was mentioned by Hikaru in his video around 1 week ago. So basically, this is international master that is very strong player according to Fidelist. He has 2450 rating and he's from Belgium, as I said. He already was under suspect, as I understood before the tournament, because the guy jumped from I think 2200 to 2450 very fast. And in the end of the day, he got caught. What happened? You can see I'll leave the link to the Hikaru's video below in description. But basically, talking short, the guy was caught in bathroom with probably a phone, not with phone in hands, but he rejected to pass control, metal detector control, and the scan basically, and that's why he got removed from the tournament, right? He was disqualified after rounds during round 8 because he was playing the game at time. He didn't win any prize because of this. And in the end, he didn't get sanctioned exactly by cheating since he rejected the control, so the phone was not found on his body. And obviously, it wasn't found in the toilet or somewhere else, probably because he was using it and had it with him. But it wasn't found, so he just got sanctioned for rejecting the scan, and they disqualified him for 1 year. So that was my game in this tournament. Before it, in round 4, I did play with white pieces against him, and I managed to win the game. I don't know if he was cheating some part of the game or not, because you know that if someone is 2200 player rated, so he doesn't need really to use a cheating option like all the game. He can just take a look at it during some important moment, like 2 or 3 times in the game, and it might be enough. So I don't know what happened with me. He didn't went much to the bathroom. At first he was playing quite fast. Then at some point, yes, he was absent some time. And then the end of the game, he decided to stick already to the game. He were kind of playing fast, and he didn't went already anywhere. But also this part of the game where he mistake. So I don't know if he was using it this game, but let's see, because it's the same tournament where he got cheating. So on knight f3, I was playing with white, he was playing with black. And we have some Larsen system with bishop f5 that sounds a little bit like a London system reversed. And here there are a lot of lines, you can go with g3, you can go with e3, there are a lot of moves, so I choose the e3 line because I wanted to play something solid, as he were 2450 and at the time was 2250, so like 200 points difference. I played this line where you just trade pieces and somewhere you safely want to play e4 with white. Good detail for black, he doesn't trade on d3, doesn't help me to win the tempi, just because if I take on f5, let's say after pawn takes, bad arrow, after pawn takes, rook e8, he has full control on the e4 square with all his pieces. So I didn't take it as well, and other point here that after c4, sometime, let's say here, to push e4, I really need to waste a tempo, I need to play queen c2, because yeah, e4 is still not possible, or queen e2 or whatever, and then black takes on d3. So now I'm ready to play 4, right? Let's say, for instance, I could play rook e1 also, but normally to do it with rook it's not that strong. So queen c2, waste of tempi. Now bishop on f5 is targeted, so it needs to go either to g6. That doesn't make sense, because let's say if he goes to g6, I can maybe take directly first, then play 4, and after capture, my queen ends up here. I put rooks on d1 and e1, and except of allowing me this, he have double pawns. So just a sample line, let's say. So that's why he takes on d3, I take, and now he takes on c4. So according to engines, this is a little bit too fast, a little bit too premature, because he needed to wait. So with rook e8, the main idea for black here that white is not having easy also the move e4, because right now it's possible. And it's true, if black will play typical line, right, after he captures, plays knight f6, queen drops back, let's say queen e2, for instance, right? So this is favorable normally for white, slightly better, just because of more space, e5 square, etc. But obviously, the point is that after e4 is played, after black captures on c4, and whatever captures on c4, whether it's queen or a pawn, after move e5, that's advantage for black. You know, typical idea that if your opponent has 3 pawns in the center, try to hit the one in the center, the middle pawn. So after d5 or pawn takes, the black has this nice c5 square available, and in general control over dark squares. So probably black can be even slightly better. So it wasn't really a threat to play for yet. But black decided to capture it without playing rook e8. And why is it a little bit worse? So after pawn takes an e5, my pawn is still on e3. So with pawn on e4, right, it breaks my structure. But with pawn on e3 yet, it's not a threat. My pawn structure is completely healthy. If he wants to capture on d4, I'll obviously capture it with a pawn. And if he doesn't capture, obviously I won't plan to capture on e5 neither. So I play rook fd1, just ignoring it. Queen e7. And here I went for knight d2. Slight, not accurate move, but also not bad. So according to engine, once again, I mean, e4 is a threat, we should not forget. Engine suggests to play c5 and receive this pawn structure, more or less of this kind, where it's true that I have d4 pawn very weak in general, but it's not easy to target it, right? So bishop, probably the dark square bishop will not never target my pawn. He needs to jump to f6 for this. With rooks on d8, it's quite impossible. It's true that knight can come, like rook fd8, followed, let's say, show it with arrows, rook fd8, by knight f8, knight e6 could be a plan. Knight e6, but still it's kind of slow, and also he's the one who having weak pawn on b7, so I can also play rook b1 and start to target the pawn on b7. But I haven't done it. I just decided to keep my structure alive. I played knight d2, so e4 threat is not there. My knight can eventually jump to e4 anyway later, and I prevent the push, right? So black take, I take, rook f8, and now I decided just to go back, because it's true that I can't go to e4 square, but at the same time now, since e4 is not longer available, knight f3. It looks like a waste of 2 tempists, but at the same time, I kind of deal with this e5 pawn already, so I provoke him to target on d4, I went back, now I don't have any problems, black doesn't have much counterplay, and rook e1 is coming next. So that's what showed to Stefan Dogs to do something in the end. Because if he'll just let me rook e1, he'll end up in previous positions that we are looking at, where white just have pawn center, and black doesn't have kind of nothing in exchange. So b5 was played. b5 is very typical pawn break, right? The idea is that after these pawns will disappear from the board, he'll have this nice d5 square for the knight, and my pawn will become weak and isolated on d4. So obviously I play rook e1, intermediate move, queen f8, and now knight g5, not the best move, once again. Plan is kind of difficult to be found. Idea of engine here is to take on e8, following by knight d1 with the idea of going to e3, something like that. So just making better a little bit my bishop, so it's a little bit more open. Also, to not give up the e file, right? Because my rook we need it in c file after cb pawns will be traded, and knight is solid on e3, not letting black pass. But in the game, I went for knight g5 move that was also okay, but not the best. Idea is obvious just to go to e4 to trade some pieces, but just not that strong, because black had opportunity with h6. This is very interesting moment, you can even put it on pause. So after h6, knight g4, the move that I missed, and that probably my opponent missed that time, that bishop a3 was very strong here. So why is that a good move? Because if I take on a3, a queen comes on a3, and this queen is very powerful. You can look at this position. First of all, b4 is a threat that wins game on the spot, targeting the knight, and it's pinned. And except of this, let's say I can grab here intermediate. Except of this, it's not easy to move pieces. If I move my queen, c4 pawn falling. If I move my knight, queen falls. And if I take on b5, I can do it, but then he can capture with a or c pawn. I probably with a pawn to open a file more. And b4 it still remains a threat, d4 becomes weak, and I don't have nothing to exchange. So I just didn't see I blundered this bishop a3 move in calculation, the same as my opponent have done. So, and if you don't take what you really do, you go bishop c1 probably, but that's too much, I think. So, but it was not played. My opponent went for rook a b8, targeting my bishop with b takes c4 idea. So c takes, and here for some reason my opponent really surprised me. He took with a pawn. I just didn't understand this move. Computer neither. So if you take with c pawn, it looks at least more logical. You take with the c pawn, you have 2 versus 1 here on the queen side. You can create the pass pawn, right? This 2 versus 1. And also it looks like more solid pawn structure. When you take it with c pawn, or with a pawn, excuse me, so after a4, not immediately, obviously, but at some point white can go a4, trade this pawn, and c6 pawn will become weakness. It's obvious that somewhere in this part, black has probably slight advantage. So by taking c b5, it's more playing for a win. Here white will always have this opportunity of playing a4 some point, trade a and b pawns, and then d pawn is weak, c pawn is weak, probably they just get traded and will end up in some drawish endgame. But here I went to rook e8, jump to e4, and queen e6. And now again pause and find the move for white that I suggest you. I think here I did quite well, because I played move d5. So why d5? Because as I'm showing here, right, my d4 pawn is weak. If knight of black pieces manage to jump to b6 to d5, my pawn on d4 will be weak, more even weak. My bishop on b2 will be just looking at its own pawn. It doesn't have any future with my pawn on d4. And black will just be only one who will pushing for a win. So d5 is good, pawn sacrifice, thematical one that opens the bishop. But a part of this, it's not really a sacrifice. That's what helped me even to find this move. So let's see. Obviously, for obvious reason, right, queen cannot take on d5, because after queen takes, pawn takes, and knight d6, I'm winning a piece, so that cannot be happening. And after what happened in the game, c takes d5, knight d6, queen d6, rook d1, suddenly 100% that white will recover material. For instance, if knight f6, then it's obvious that I'll capture on f6 and capture on d5. If knight b6, I have queen b5, since now rook is no longer protecting the pawn, and knight c4 idea that looks like winning on the spot, actually not losing because black has missed his defense, but queen c4, d takes c4, rook d6. That's completely winning for white, because rook cannot take on b2 because of this mate. And only thing that it's not winning just because rook b2 is possible move, and suddenly queen f8, and it's also a draw. But that move also is not going to win the game for black, except of this maybe rook a8 I was looking, but it's the same reason as knight b6. Queen takes d5, queen takes, rook takes, and fortunately for white, my bishop is covering this a1 square, so that's not checkmate, and I'm winning the game on the next move. So we go back again. Rook d1 just recovers a pawn. My opponent, instead of probably what he should have done, is to go for this line with knight b6. If he saw it, right, that knight b6, queen b5, knight c4, queen c4, he has rook b2 move, then he must have gone here, because knight f8, it's playing to lose, not playing to win, because after queen d5, we see that I just have bishop versus knight. Obviously, it might be never lost for black, because it's too many pieces traded already. But after just queen d5, rook d5, what he has to do is to play before here. Very important to fix the weakness on a2, and in this case, probably yes, almost sure, all the pieces will get traded, because there's no way to stop rook a8 and rook a2. I might protect the pawn if I want to play for a win, like rook d2, rook a8, and remove my bishop. But still, then I'm too passive already. Rook jumps to a3, knight goes to the game, and it's obviously a draw. Again, my opponent didn't want a draw, probably, but so he went for g6 square. Here it is where he kind of blitzing out the moves, and surprisingly, he lost very fast. So he went to g6. That's losing on the spot, because after bishop e5, white just gets an extra pawn. There's no way to protect b5, because I know how can someone not see it, to be honest, but let's say queen g6, right? Bishop e5 is the most obvious move in the world. So rook b6 and rook b7 are moves. Rook b7 is not good for obvious reasons. And if you try to go to b6, then I just go bishop d6, threatening bishop f8, following by queen d8 mate. One of few options to protect it is go queen e6, with the idea that after bishop f8 you can go. Let's say this. I'll show it in the board. A new variation. You can go king f8, and after check. Okay, even this doesn't probably help, but okay, it's anyway lost. But queen c5 is just simple move, just double attack directly. or any other move that can be played here in the game. So rook b6 just bad, so he needs to remove the rook, and after queen b5 I get healthy free pawn. Queen f5, pinning the bishop a4, pawn start to roll, defend the queen, remove the pin, and going to promote. Queen c2, and here just a very solid move, rook a1. I mean, except of any other moves that would be winning. Rook f1, obviously, let's say, is the safest, but here I just got a little bit lucky. It's not difficult to see, but after rook a1, I got lucky in terms of that there's no mate suddenly, right? Queen c1, rook takes c1, rook takes c1, and queen f1 wins the game because there's no mate, and this endgame is completely winning due to this pawn on a4. That's supported by my bishop, and his knight is out of the game. So he can't go for queen c1, and now it's game lost because I have ideal structure where my queen defends my bishop, bishop defends the rook, everything defended here. So my opponent win for obvious move rook c5, letting me only but good move queen b2, defending the bishop, defending the rook, attacking opponent's queen. And after queen f5, again is a mistake, probably the game was already lost because there's no move, just pawn is rolling, knight is too passive. But now again I can take on g7, because after rook c2, moves that my opponent planned probably here, I just go for queen f6, and there's no way for black to do anything. For example, if rook takes on f2, I just can grab at least on f5, maybe there's some more simple win, I don't know, but even this endgame is completely winning. I can remove my bishop to win it more easier way, or I can trade on f8 that is winning anyway, so that's completely lost for black. And obviously if queen takes on f2, I just take back with my queen because it's defending. So I went second pawn, queen has to move back because endgame also is not favorable at all. He went to c5, having pressure still on f2, but I just remove my bishop, threatening checkmate in 1, knight a6, a5, and here my opponent resigned. He resigned and say like something went wrong in this game. Obviously it did, because now opponent is getting to be promoted, f2 pawn is very well defended, and mate on c1 never happens. Actually, maybe on next move, if I want, I will play h3, obviously some prophylactic, now it's not needed because my bishop covers c1 square, but better, yeah, to hold some prophylactic move in case, to avoid being mated. So, did he cheat in this game or not? I don't know. In some moments, obviously, it's true that in critical moment he got some advantage, maybe because he played well, maybe because his pawn played well, I don't know. But in the end of the game, since he started to sit on the board and play very fast, he ended up losing. And also, talking about this, because he reasoned that he didn't want to pass the scan because he was sick, right? But let's say in airport or in any other place, how you do it? Moreover, you don't need to get naked, come on, or do anything. You just need to stand, like he was standing in front of the arbiter, and only thing what arbiter will do is just to pass the scan, right? It's nothing out of the world, right? So I think that reason why he didn't want to pass it was quite obvious, but we never know for sure. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you will have less cheaters in your game, in the over the board or in chess.com or wherever you play. And wish you good luck in your games, and see yourself in next video.